How should grammar be taught? By Rune Hjelm-Pedersen. What is grammar? Grammar is often described as the system of a language. However, there seems to be different definitions of grammar. Vivian Cook uses a wide definition when he calls grammar the order of words. Noam Chomsky states that language is a computational system embedded in the human mind, and that we therefore are predisposed to understanding the structure of language. Reading a lot of articles does not make me an expert on grammar, but I believe it is safe to say that grammar is the way words are used together to communicate. Depending on level and proficiency, grammar is everything from beginner vocabulary to the knowledge and use of idioms and collocations. As if it wasn't difficult enough to agree on what grammar really is, linguists argue about the importance of grammar and how it should be taught. As a starting point, I will try to explain the different views using the pedagogical principle focus on form and focus on forms. Focus on forms relies on a traditional teaching approach, which largely depends on the national syllabus and the progression the course book provides. A typical method is PPP, present, practice, produce, and linguistics as Widowson and Swan represent this approach. Normally, a lesson will consist of isolated grammar practice, where you practice one grammatical feature at a time. The opposite approach is focus on form. Michael Long advocates for focus on form and for task-based language learning or teaching. The main tasks here are not following a sequenced grammatical syllabus, but rather provide the learners with communicative tasks where grammar is explored during the tasks. Furthermore, Long answered the critique from Swan, who states that a lexical syllabus with a word frequency list is the only way of ensuring lexical coverage, by claiming that the learners will be exposed to more authentic input through task-based language teaching than through textbooks. Adding elements to focus on form, Merrill Swain argues that teaching grammar lessons out of context is insufficient and introduces the output hypothesis and noticing as central elements in language learning. When the learners discover a communication breakdown, the search for a solution will be triggered. Remembering that grammar is not merely grammatical rules and punctuation, Laufer claims that word acquisition from context alone shows that only a small amount of words can be picked up and suggests an alternative hypothesis. Word-focused instruction may be more effective for vocabulary learning than incidental word acquisition from a context-based input situation. In other words, Laufer combines focus on form and focus on forms to bring the learner to new levels of reading and communication. In his article about task-based language teaching and misunderstandings, Rod Ellis is not unaware that focus on form comes with challenges. After answering all the critique against task-based language teaching as approach, he mentions specifically how to measure task complexity, how to assess results and achievements, and the educational level of the teacher as crucial elements that need further research. Reflecting on my own practice in the classroom, I have done a bit of both focus on form and focus on forms. In my first years of teaching, I believe I had lessons where I put learners through isolated grammar lessons. It could be that they gained grammatical competence, but it never really led to increased communicative competence. It takes a lot of experience to put away the course books and to see that language is best learned by reading and listening to authentic literature. Based on selected texts and tasks, it is easier to grasp grammar and increase vocabulary when you plan your lessons and know where the learners might have a communicational breakdown. That is where the interesting teaching begins. Having said this, I believe that Vivian Cook is right when he claims that every teaching method works for someone somewhere. And now to examples of tasks. The three tasks I have chosen is the blog, Dictogloss, and I will explain further how a lesson can be done with reading as activity. The blog task is made by creating a blog connected to the aims in the syllabus with clear criteria. A central aim in the syllabus is to learn about native people in English-speaking countries. I introduced the topic and we read about the native people in the United States, Australia and New Zealand. Later the learners were to create a blog where they told about the history, culture and the challenges. Earlier we had read parts of the absolutely true story of a part-time Indian, so the learners were familiar with aspects of the Native American people and the challenges they are facing. This way they had some pre-knowledge of what to include in their blogs. Swain tells about a dictogloss and how this will provide practice in use of grammatical construction. The teacher reads a text twice, where the learners first listen and then take notes. Then the learners work in pairs to reconstruct the text. In the end, the results are compared and the new knowledge can be discussed. As a lesson plan, I would like to use a task I recently did in class. The task was to read and work with the text The Landlady by Roald Dahl. Everyone knows this author, but the learners are not familiar with his mysterious short stories. We had already worked with Beware of the Dog, which has parallels to his own life being a pilot in the Second World War. Trying another approach, I made up pre-reading tasks for the learners to do, just to prepare the learners what to expect in the short story. These tasks included reading comprehension, vocabulary, grammar, and expressions, and are adapted from tasks found on a resource website made by the British Council and the BBC. After discussing the pre-reading tasks, the learners read the text followed by anticipating what happens next. The story ends quite open, but everyone has a what will happen. This creates a good environment for oral practice. Since the text does not reveal the end, the post-reading tasks will give the readers some clues of what might have happened. Reading about female murderers using poison in addition to noticing central information and grammar in the text will provide new knowledge and give the learners real-world communicative skills. So, what is my conclusion on how to teach grammar? To use the words of Vivian Cook again, grammar is knowledge in mind, not rules in a book. Whatever means you use as a teacher to create good communicators and learners with confidence of own skills, you might have succeeded. But studying theoretical approaches has made me more aware of creating good communicative tasks, which covers both meaning and raises grammatical issues to solve. At the same time, I'm quite happy to realize that my own practice has changed over the years to a more focus on form-based approach.